back to this week's Unfiltered Autistic Podcast. And this week I'm going to be speaking to an incredible mother and advocate. This lady's name is Roseanne, I'm going to say this wrong and I apologise, McQuillan. Now I'm going to ask that lady to introduce her name properly, because this could be my Mayo accent or my incapacity to say last names correctly, because this won't be the first time. But Roseanne is actually a dear friend of mine, and I've got to know her for many, many years through social media in particular. Not only is she an incredible mother, she's an incredible friend, but in particular in the space of AAC. So that's alternative augmentative communication. I hope I said that correctly as well. She's a real, I suppose, torchbearer, and I suppose a beacon of information, light and support for families just like mine that are on the AAC journey. So not only is she an incredible parent and advocate, but she's also not only speaking about her lived experience of a parent to incredible children, but also in the realm of AAC, she will often, and even for myself personally, has sent me resources before for my own gorgeous Connor and Max, that again, I'll let her introduce herself much better than I'm going to do right now. But again, she'll explain a little bit more about herself right now and her own, I suppose, interest in the area of AAC and how that came about. And then I suppose the rest of the podcast will move off. So I'm going to hand it over to yourself, Roseanne. I'm not going to attempt to say her last name again, because as we just heard, I can't say it. So I'm going to hand over to yourself now to introduce yourself to all of our brilliant audience. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. Thanks so much. It's such a privilege to be on this. I've listened to the other episodes in season 1, so I'm so honoured. No, just to start off about myself, I am just like yourself, a mom, regular mom. I had 3 kids. My eldest is Senan. He's autistic, and he's who is responsible for all of this. I suppose he was diagnosed or identified as autistic when he was 2. And then I suppose everything changed then. Excuse me. So Senan had always had words, mouth words. Like, we would have a lot of labeling when he was that age, when he was a toddler. We now obviously know later on that he's a Gestalt language processor, but at the time that wasn't a thing that we had heard of. But I remember saying to our private speech and language therapist, you know her yourself, Aoife from Sparking Speech, that when we first started speech therapy at around 2.5, I said, he has all of these words, he knows how to say all of these words, but he just doesn't know what to do with them. And so we set about, working to support him in speech therapy. And I just felt that it wasn't enough. He wasn't able to put across what was going on in his little brain. And so I said to her one of the days, well, what do you think about PECs? Will we introduce PECs? And I'd say some of your listeners would be familiar with PECs. And she said, well, actually, I've been thinking about this myself. And what about AAC? And this is back, he was 2.5, so he's now 6.5. So that's 4 years ago. And that would have been very early stages for AAC in Ireland. Like, I wouldn't know any other children that had AAC at the time. And I said, really, you think that he's ready for that? Because if you had heard about AAC, you would have heard all of these kind of myths about there's certain prerequisites like age and all that sort of stuff for kids to start off. And she said, absolutely, let's give it a go. So it was her that really set the wheels in motion, and we got a trial for AAC, and we started off with LAMP, which was the application, and he just took to it like straight away. Now, when I say he took to it, like he was exploring it, he was really interested by it and into the animal pages, his interests and everything, and really loving it. And I thought, okay, this is great. So we set off an application to get him a device through the HSC, and we eventually got it. So we were lucky enough, we were one of the lucky ones to get a funded device. So that was it. So we started with that, and I suppose I thought that this is it now. This is the answer. He has the device and he's going to communicate. I didn't realise we were going to come up against so much kind of barriers, and the amount of advocacy I would have to do around the device and making sure he'd be heard. So that kind of is where it all started, because I felt very much like that was a role that I had to take on, and to advocate for him to be heard through through whatever way he was going to communicate, whether it be the mouth words or whatever. And I think a turning point for me, so we had the AAC going, but I mean, like many parents would be overwhelmed when you're starting off with AAC, and it's a whole, new journey. That, I don't like the word journey, but like you're on this path that you have to teach yourself about, and it's different, and you don't really have that many people around to represent a family like you, that you can kind of relate to. You don't know. So yeah, I think it kind of, we did try our best in the start, and I'm not going to knock myself on it. We tried our best to support him with it, and it was ticking along, but then the words were coming more, so we kind of switched to like supporting more with mouth words, and that kind of took a bit of a sideline, and there was a turning point for me when he was in preschool. I got a video sent to me from his teacher at the time, and I won't go into the, whether it was a right thing or not, this particular activity that they were doing in school. We won't delve into that issue. We'll leave that. But basically what the activity was, they were preparing for Halloween, and they were doing trick or treat with sweets. And now Senan, as I said, Gestalt language processor, he had said trick or treat many a time before. In fact, I had a video of him just a few weeks previous when I was saying happy birthday, Senan, and he didn't have any of it. He didn't want any of the happy birthday. It was trick or treat, because that was on the brain, Halloween. But in this particular situation, when the demand was on him to say trick or treat to get the sweet, I could see in the video my child just frozen, that fight or flight, like he was just frozen. And so what did he do? He actually, he kind of looked around him, and he knocked on the wall beside him, like as if he was knocking on a door. And I thought, oh, look, he's doing the knocking, like for the trick or treating. And so the teacher kind of pulled him back and said, no, say trick or treat. I know, yeah. It's these things are things we wouldn't do nowadays, but it was a few years ago. So, we know better now. These are not sort of techniques that we would carry out nowadays. But he was just like, he couldn't do it. I could see it. And so he went to walk away. And again, she said, no, come on, let's do trick or treat. And another child walked up beside him and said, trick or treat. And then they got the sweet. And so she said, say trick or treat, then. And he knocked on the door again. And I just looked at that video, and I just felt, my goodness, my child is communicating. Can you see? He's saying trick or treat in his way. He wants the sweet, and he's saying it. And it was at that moment I said to myself, I will make sure he is heard. He is heard in whatever way that he communicates. And that was really the beginning of it. I thought, okay, this thing has to now be our priority. It has to be part of our life. It has to go everywhere with us, so that he has all of these ways to communicate in the moment, because for whatever reason that day, those words were not coming to him. But he absolutely knew what was being asked of him, and he absolutely, I thought, effectively communicated trick or treat in another way. But it was just whether we were going to listen to what he was saying, and accept all of the different ways. But so that was it then. We then set off kind of having to advocate for him to have access for AAC in every setting in his life, in school.
And Roseanne, I just say to you that just even listening to that was so powerful for me as a parent, just for you to share that story with all of our listeners, for even say individuals that are doing their best in settings but may not unfortunately have the opportunity to get that great training so they know what to do. Like, that's such a powerful story. But what you said there about that you would make sure that his voice would be heard. My God, I was thinking to myself, because I've been on social media with you for years, I'm like, my God, have you been a powerhouse in it? Oh my God, goosebumps saying this. My God, have you been a powerhouse in that regard every moment since? Because you're like, you taught so many people about even TD Snap. Like when I was saying, because obviously Connor, my son, has been he was using LAMP, and then he was gone to Proloco, and he had a few kind of, I won't go into it on the podcast, but he had a tricky year last year. So we were moving away then from Proloco, kind of more to do with trauma than anything. And then we were like, what's the right decision? And I remember consistently seeing your videos and seeing how happy your gorgeous and empowered your gorgeous boy was with his TD Snap. And I thought, you know what? I feel like this is the right decision. And then I linked in with Aoife, and I linked in with the incredible Julie Holmes as well from Be Me Therapy. Yeah. So between Aoife's advice and actually also Katrina from Next Steps SLT, linked in with those, I would call the three ladies like experts, powerhouses in this space.
Absolutely, yeah.
That I definitively remember that you're unwittingly part of that story, because I remember thinking, do you know what? I think it's TD Snap. And then I did obviously a little bit more research just for Connor to see would it work for Connor. And again, obviously the feedback was that yes, it would. But again, I want to thank you for that, because I'm also a parent that followed you, that was inspired by you as a parent, empowering your incredible young son. So I'll silence myself again now to hear more of your story, because I know it's so powerful.
But that's it, and that's what drives me, because I feel like you've named some fantastic speech and language therapists there who have supported me and inspired me. Like, as I said, Aoife has a personal relationship with us and Senan over years and years. And then I know Julie and, oh gosh, the name.
Katrina from Next Step SLT.
Katrina.
Yeah, she's
Katrina.
incredible.
Absolutely, from social media. But so it became a case that I could see parents looking for the same answer, looking for the same solution. And unfortunately, I think there just isn't enough, like outside of some fantastic SLTs there who are really advocating for AAC and have done so now for quite a few years. We still aren't there yet. And I unfortunately still do hear parents telling stories, being discouraged away from AAC if their child has any amount of spoken language. And I think that's so unfortunate, because if my example tells you anything, it's that sometimes a child, a neurodivergent person, can access speech, and then in another situation, whether they be dysregulated or the environment or whatever it is, they can't. And so to have AAC be that kind of consistent avenue to use, like in all of these circumstances, and it's great, because even now we have a situation with Senan where he uses both to deliver the one message in a moment. Like the other day, he was telling me, and again, he's a Gestalt language processor, so you'll kind of appreciate this example as well, if you're interested in that subject. But he loves Carrick Mines, right? This is a place in Dublin. You won't be familiar with it probably, Amanda, but it's just a retail park, but his special interest is logos and brands. And there's down underneath in the underground car park, there's like a billboard that has all of the shops' names on restaurants in this particular retail park. And I mean, if you want to see a beautiful example of autistic joy, it's my child in front of this billboard. Like he just gets so excited by it, so we actually go out to Carrick Mines nearly every weekend, and he's requesting that actively. Like on his talker, I have a button for Carrick Mines. Anyway, we were out in Carrick Mines, and he says to me, with using his mouth words, Woodies. And I said, okay, we can go to Woody's next. And then directly after that, he said, it's your birthday. And I said, a lot of people think that's just so random, not connected at all. Then into the talker, he goes into his page that I've done up for, these Pez sweet dispensers. That's also his special interest. He collects them. And in he goes, my collection. And I knew in that moment he was telling me in Woody's, in the party section where the birthday, decorations and stuff is, there is also a stand with Pez, and he's telling us, let's go there. So it's fantastic. He's so amazing at communicating what he wants to get across, but it's just a matter of being that communication partner who's going to listen to him. And I think that's really, really important. And the message that I always try to put across to parents is that we might have these expectations of what communication for our child should look like. But as I've gone along on my journey with Senan over the last 4 years, it's that I appreciate that he is a different communicator, and all of the things that he puts across deserve to be respected and heard and acknowledged. And if I have the time to listen to that, then I can actually really connect and really understand what is going on inside his brain. And if that's, the message that I can put across to parents, is absolutely, because a lot of the times we have had in the past these compliance-based strategies with PECs and things like that. And I even know some parents, unfortunately, who were encouraged by speech and language therapists who perhaps just didn't have the awareness of AAC at the time, and were doing their best from previous knowledge of PECs that they've used or whatever, but they were using the device in a way like a PECs book, where, they were using it to be only used for requesting and only getting the item or whatever it is when the button was pressed. And that's absolutely, from what I know myself, is not the way to go with AAC. And that's another message that I've always tried to put across to parents, that it's supposed to be about robust communication, being able to communicate about things that the child loves, that drives them, that motivates them. That's what comes first. That's what you get the buy-in from when you're introducing AAC.
And can I ask you then, so say if I was today a parent listening to the podcast and I'm considering, okay, my child potentially for right now is not using mouth words, or maybe they are, but they're not, as you've given a great example of, not able to express themselves robustly or as fully as they would like. And maybe they're considering AAC and they don't know a lot about it, but they're considering it. But maybe there's people around them that are well-meaning. They're like, oh, maybe don't, or, now I'm not saying professionals, say just generally people in their lives, like, oh, mightn't be a good idea, or, all well-meaning. They might have fears that, this might overtake their capacity to use verbal language or spoken language or mouth words eventually. If you were talking to me, if I was right now a brand new parent and I was saying, Roseanne, I feel like this could be what we need for Connor, but I'm just a little bit hesitant, because well-meaning family and friends are saying, oh, no, if you use AAC, inverted commas, Connor will never speak, which obviously in our family circumstance, he's started to actually try to speak, which he obviously accept all the ways that he wants to communicate. But just, I suppose, selfishly as a mom, I love to hear his voice, his actual mouth words that he says, but equally love to see him using the speech device. But if I was a brand new parent right now in front of you saying, I'm considering this, but everyone is saying, hold off, he might start to use the spoken language, don't use the AAC, it might stop. What would you say to a parent that is feeling like they think the same as you, but maybe people unintentionally are kind of moving them off those thoughts to maybe consider this might be something they should be afraid of? What would you say, if you're happy to kind of discuss that?
Well, I say, first of all, I completely understand. Like you say yourself, as a parent, you really want to hear your child say, the words, I love you, let's say, or whatever, you want to hear your child speak. But I think there has to come a point when you stand back and you say, well, actually, that's my wish, but what they really need, what they are, is a person that needs to be heard. And that's, that's the main focus, and it becomes your main focus. And I will also tell them that it's a complete myth, or from my experience. I know there's research out there, but I won't speak to research because I'm speaking here as a parent and to my own experience. That is not the case. That AAC prevents your child from speaking. In fact, it's the opposite in our experience. It offers them an opportunity to learn language, to express themselves, and you know, it's a concrete thing as well. As a neurodivergent person myself as well, I think, you know, language can often be so visceral, like it dissolves. You know, if somebody says something to you, it takes a while to process or whatever. It's there, you know, in black and white. It can be really, really supportive for neurodivergent people. And also Senan is a hyperlexic, so he really just thrives in the area of language. And to have deprived him of AAC just so I could hear, you know, I think that it's just, when you give it a go, that's what I would say, sorry, to the parent. I say, give it a go. It cannot do any harm. And I will guarantee you that when you have those moments with your child where they're able to share a moment of, like, it might not be to request. In fact, Semon's only started really using the device to request lately, because he's been a very effective requester, you know, pulling me by the hand or whatever. But it's all those other things that came beforehand, this shared joy that we have, you know, talking to me about his logos, talking to me about his pets, or what, you know, she has a fantastic sense of humor. I would have never known some of the funny things that he thinks of if it hadn't been for the device. And I guarantee you, give it a go, you will not regret it, and you will have those moments that you'll look back and you think, God, if I didn't try, I wouldn't have had. And that's basically how I feel about it. I just can't imagine that if I had never introduced this to Senan, all of those moments that we had together, all of those times that he communicated something to me, he may not have had that opportunity.
And I would probably find the same with Connor. Like, he's really been embracing the TD Snap. He started in a fabulous school this past September, and they really embrace AAC. So I feel like there's a strong role there for school, do you feel, to also be on board. And so they would use, I every time I see a photo of Connor, whether he's in the classroom, whether he's out in the community, whether he's at PE, whether, like, today they're at a really fun kind of like a, I'm sure this is not the right language, but like a bouncy type of interactive event environment. Like, everything is there's probably a name for this, like a jump zone type thing, but it's
jump zone.
Yeah,
kind
but
of
yeah,
thing.
there's probably a better name for it. I think it's Kids in Motion or something is the name of it. But you will see him on the trampoline holding his speech device and roaring, laughing, and pressing the buttons. And I just, it brings my heart so much peace as well, because I know that at every opportunity he can communicate. And again, he naturally himself has started to type in, as opposed to just pressing the words. He will now type in a lot of what he wants to say, which I just think is fabulous. But that distinctly and definitively did come from a school being a co-collaborator, because if they hadn't, I don't know. And again, I think when you were mentioning there that you've definitely noticed that having that scaffold of the AAC device has really supported him to feel confident to use his language. And I would feel the same for Connor, that by Connor using his speech device, because even since Christmas, I heard him last night. He was standing outside my office door here, which is literally beside the bathroom, which we live in a tiny house with all the tiny rooms, and he would use the bathroom before he goes to bed. And I heard him, I was just about to go on a call with a parent, and I heard him saying, sleep. And I went, Connor, you said sleep. Like, I was equally as excited if he had typed it, but I was just like, oh my God, that's another word. So that's another word. And what I feel like for me, and again, maybe this is just me in my own mind, but I feel like the speech device has really taken the pressure off Connor, feeling like he has to communicate one which way. Now he can communicate, and hopefully he always felt he could, but he definitively now very clearly communicate and try to use the spoken language if he would like to, because if he hasn't the will, the want, or the capacity to use that, he knows he can type it in and that we will still understand, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And we're all multimodal communicators. And that's kind of brings me back to that moment that I spoke about at the very start. That was really the turning point, is that we are multimodal communicators, and all of our, you know, ways that we communicate must be respected and acknowledged. And when we do that, we just open up to hear. No, it's fantastic. And I love that, like, with the speech device, it's there, as you say, as a backup for, you know, to take that pressure off. It's absolutely the case, I feel. And I love to see, like, we'd at the beginning, we'd often be out in the shops or wherever, and we'd be approached by people, you know, and I'd find out then after that the parent it's a parent who wants to know about it, you know, because they've been, you know, they've heard about it, or maybe it's been brought up as a suggestion, and to see it around, I think more and more, it's fantastic because it really normalizes it as another way of communicating. And we would have it everywhere with us, like you're saying there with Connor on the trampoline and in the bouncy park or whatever. Yeah. But that's it. It has to be an extension of him and of the family. You know, it really, there's a point where you get to that, like if you go out in the car or whatever, or go for a walk and you've forgotten the device, I'm afraid you have to go back and get it. You know, but I'm sorry, I've skipped over what you asked me about the school. Absolutely. It's absolutely crucial. And this is something that I really, really feel strongly about advocating, for AAC use in education, because I feel like in order to be able to really access the curriculum, to be really able to reach your full potential, an AAC user has to have an environment that's going to have, firstly, the device accessible, but also a communication partner who is knowledgeable in AAC. And I've had in the past to really advocate for AAC in different settings, whether it's school or even with different therapists, you know, and it's often been said to me, well, maybe it'd be better, you know, if it's a bit of a distraction, you know, because he'd often, like, you'll see, especially in the beginning time, you'll see AAC users, they'll be exploring the device, they'll be doing what they call kind of babbling, you know, pressing buttons over and over again, but also it's kind of like a stim. But that's how my child has learnt the device inside out, but it's often perceived as a sort of a distraction, and you have to advocate to say, well, I'm afraid that's his voice, it has to be with him no matter what. So if the lesson is not working, then we need to rethink it, you know. And another example was we were in music therapy one time, and again that was brought to me, maybe we should leave the device behind because he's not really engaging with the music and all that sort of stuff. But the point for me is for my child to be able to communicate. So I said, well, what's he saying? Let's see what he's saying. And can we incorporate that? So we actually created a song around what he had typed out. It was a stim. I knew it was something that he was typing out because he liked the sound of it. You know, it's KFC, whatever. And I'll always remember, because KFC obviously is a logo that he loves and whatever. I don't know where he got that from. But so I actually started singing, what about like KFC, whatever. And we're in the music therapy singing KFC, whatever. But he engaged and he absolutely loved it. Like, you want to see the joy that it brought him, that we had taken what he was saying and brought it into the music. So no, it's about rethinking, and schools have to embrace this, I think. I feel strongly about that. He's in a setting now at the moment that is fantastic. They've actually self-funded devices for the teachers to model on in the classroom themselves, and they also throw it up onto the interactive board, and the teacher has also done training with Aoife. I've arranged training for her, and I send her pages that I do, or she sends me, he's in a Gael school, so she sends me some vocabulary, so I do pages in Irish for him, and I send it back to her to have on the device. But it's amazing. Up until this year, he has always been the single child in the class with the device. And this year, out of 5, there are 3 using TD Snap in the class. So it's really changing, and I think it's parents that are leading the way with this.
And I think it's also people like you that are, for other parents that are seeing, say, for example, you dropping in Senan and them seeing Senan with his device, making them feel like, oh, this is actually, it's like you said earlier, representation. I was thinking of the little graphics that I released on Little Puddings. Yeah. So we can, like, Max loves books, and I knew that Max was going to be moving to use TD Snap. So I was like popping these. He loves Sesame Street onto all of his Sesame. He's looking at me like, going, oh, and I'm like, yeah, look, they have a talker just like Max.
Oh, you must look at my Instagram page. I created a little, so Senan loves Sesame Street as well, Oscar the Grouch.
Oh my God, Max loves
and
Oscar.
I created a little, it's like a little lanyard holder, but I printed off lamp, like just the core page, and popped it on it to make a little AAC device for his little Oscar the Grouch teddy. I'll send you one.
Oh my God, I'll be over to watch that. That is amazing. So I suppose we're coming close to time now, and I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you've a very little gorgeous Baba sleeping at the moment. So that's why I also thank you to make time to talk with me today. But I suppose if you wanted to have the final word on if you're a parent considering should you go the route of AAC, what's kind of, I suppose, if you feel comfortable to say, what do you think would be something that when you were starting out all those years ago, if someone had said to you, whatever that was going to be, what would you think the final word would be that you would say to them to really kind of bolster the younger, you're still very young, the younger Roseanne that was about to start out on the AAC journey? If you could give like the words of wisdom, say, to the younger Roseanne 4 or 5 years ago starting out, what might they be?
I think, the biggest thing you hear all the time, and it's so true, it's presuming competence. Your child has all of these thoughts, and they're just ready to come out. And while it is a slow process, it isn't an overnight process. And if you think that introducing AAC and they're going to start typing out and communicating, it doesn't work that way. But persist with it, and you will not regret it, because all you're doing is offering your child a way to communicate in their way, on their terms, and like you said, without that kind of judgment or demand on them to do something that just isn't accessible to them at the time. And it's a beautiful way of communicating. Like, some of the most beautiful moments that we've had together and shared have been over the device. And as much as I love to hear the words, I love you, mommy, or, whatever he would say to me, I absolutely love the personality that he can bring across in the device. So I know I'm very much speaking about my own experience, but I think it's been the experience of any parent that I've been in touch with, who has then proceeded to introduce AAC. We have a little group going. I actually want to mention this. Myself and my friend Charlotte have set up a WhatsApp group for parents, and we parents from all over the country, and we share things that are going on, things that we see online. We encourage one another. We share our wins. We say, oh, look what he's done today, and fascinating things, and really spur each other on. And I think that's really, really important to create a sense of community, and to normalize it, because you do feel like you're on a different path. But when you've got your buddies and we're all kind of in the same boat, and we're there and supporting one another with it, it doesn't seem like such a mammoth task to take this on. And we also meet up on a weekly basis for those who can make it in Tala, and we meet up and we go through different things on the device if we have come across anything, or whatever it might be. But also we just have the chats, and we've kind of created that sense of community, and it's wonderful. So I just want to mention that here. If anyone is interested, they can contact me through my Instagram page, and I can
and I think I can hear your little Baba in the background. But I just wanted to say, do you want to let everyone also, because I mispronounced your name at the start, do you want to say your name correctly, and also what is your social media handle? And I'll have all this information in the description. And also, just to say one more time, you are an absolute powerhouse. The fact you've set up a WhatsApp group and an in-person group, as I said at the start, what a powerhouse.
Oh, thank you. My name is Roseanne McQuillan. And thank you so much, Amanda, for this lovely chat, and for sharing this love of AAC. So thank you. And
also let everybody know, what is your social media handle if they want to contact you potentially about being in the WhatsApp group?
It's at Come With Me AAC.
Brilliant. And I'll share all the links to your social media and a little bit more about yourself in the description of this podcast. So I will go. Thank you very much to everyone for listening. And more than anything, as always, a huge thank you, heartfelt thank you to yourself, Roseanne, for all that you're doing in this space to support families just like mine. So thank you. Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.